Hello and welcome to the Radio Inquisition. My name is Erik Nagel, and this is part 2 of my 2-part interview with David Brody, co-executive producer of the Elvis Duran Morning Show. In part 1, we discussed how he got into the business, the growth and the success of the show, and breaking down what exactly he does there. But today, we'll explore some of David's memorable moments on the show, the popular phone taps that he's involved with, selling Justin Timberlake's breakfast on eBay, being on the air the morning of September 11th, 2001 in both New York City and Washington, D.C., and some other happy, less depressing things. And unless you got something better to do, stay right there. It's the return of David Brody coming up right after this.
Erik Nagel's Radio Inquisition.
Your whole staff for Elvis Duran is huge. I was looking online as far as the bios that go with this with this show. Mm-hmm. How does that work? I mean, most shows barely have a producer and a secondary producer,
right? And
they're syndicated and what have you. You've got, I think, 12, 14 people that were just on the bio page alone.
Yeah. Elvis likes to call himself Judy Garland in The Wizard of Oz because he picks up friends along the way, you know? I got added to the show for free, and then they found a role for me when Elliot left. As the show got bigger, we needed more people. Interns, a lot of our staff is former interns who were so good, we had to find a spot for them. Mm-hmm. So they added production, they added to prank phone calls. And as our show grew, the skill level and the amount of people you need grew. And so we have our own imaging guy, like you did. You know, you didn't use the radio station's imaging guy. We have our own voice. We have a producer who does imaging. We have a producer who handles all of our syndicated audio, records liners, commercials, handles any recordings that our affiliates need. We have people who interface with sales and edit our best ofs and edit content for the show that day. The show itself, I mean, we have more co-hosts than most shows. Mm-hmm. Usually it's a guy and a girl, or a guy, a girl, and a street guy. This show has always had 2 female hosts and 1 to 2 male hosts and a producer. There's 2 of us now. There's a lot to do. On a show our size, we do a lot of stuff that maybe a syndicated show, the syndicator would do a lot of it. But we are a lot more hands-on. And so, believe me, it's all budgeted. They check to see who's doing what, and everybody, but everybody has a role.
Like you said earlier that you had to write out your 4-page job description.
Yeah, because we had a new boss in town, and she doesn't know
justify.
Us. Well, yeah. Well, the new boss doesn't know me from a hole in the wall, so she wanted to get to know everybody and meet everybody, and what do you guys do? And, you asked me what I did. I really told you, like, tip of the iceberg. Because if you didn't know what I did and I want to get paid, I need to show you 4 pages. Yeah. So if you sign my check, I will write up whatever you want me to write. But our people do a lot more than just, we have a phone producer, but she does an on-air segment. She edits best of. She oversees the internship program with me. So everybody does something other than just their title because there's a lot to do. So when you make a lot of money and you're on a lot of markets, there's a lot riding on it.
You have that luxury.
You have that luxury. There's a lot of moving parts on our show. The customization. We do a lot of things that other syndicated shows don't do, where they chop up shows and they send them out and then some board op assembles it. We're doing a live show in a lot of markets. There's a lot of moving parts. And as long as that happens, we get to keep the people. If we go back to one station, we would not have 15 people. Mm-hmm. We'd go back to 6 or 7 or whatever we had at the time.
You had mentioned about having your own imaging, own voice guy. Usually the morning show is a really important part of any station, mm-hmm. and it's very integrated into the station. Sure. And the history of the morning show on Z100 always has been. And the fact that you guys managed to take it into syndication and be successful, how involved is the morning show still with the local station? I mean, is it Elvis Duran its own separate entity, but still is part of, like, Z100 is built around the morning show, or is Z100 its own thing as well?
No, we are Z100's morning show. And so that's why I said I still deal with sales here locally, even though the other affiliates handle their sales stuff with Premiere. We work with Z100 there is no our show without Z100. We're you know what I mean? So we all get paid from here. This is where we started. We're in this building. They build the studio for us. We still use the imaging of Z100 on our show locally. We still do all the contests. We still give away Jingle Ball tickets. We still love and mention and talk about and interact with all the jocks on the station. We are this station's morning show, as much as we are anybody else's, but probably more because we're here in the building.
Okay.
But we are very cognizant that we're the morning show here.
So that's great that you're still the morning show. You're not just the morning show that Z100 carries.
Oh, no, we have weekly meetings with the program director. No, she's still our program director.
It's good that you can still do that because when a morning show does get the opportunity to syndicate, even though they're on their local station, they start kind of moving away from being part of the local station. Like they're this other entity and that you have to cater to them.
Absolutely.
Now.
But this is Z100. It's the biggest friggin' radio station on the planet. And why wouldn't we want to be affiliated with the biggest, most resources, most talent? The stars all come here. They all come here and they say, oh my God, I grew up listening to you guys. I used to tape the show every day. We had Allison Williams in recently from Girls, and she was shaking. Oh my God, when I was a kid, her father's Brian Williams. He rented a limo for my birthday. We went up to Z100. I got to answer phones. This is we're who we are because of Z100, not the other way around.
Don't answer the phone.
Elvis Duran, the Elvis Duran phone tap.
All right, let's get into it. Today's phone tap is very unique. Today, Dave Brody does an Indian man.
Ooh.
Calling a man who is Irish.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's true. And, man, they go at it. Talk about two cultures clashing.
Illnesses or diseases in your family?
Yes, I have all the diseases I caught from your whore of a wife.
Okay, so there you go.
Put that down, yeah?
I am proud to be an American. Can you say the same?
Yeah, you're proud to be American with a stupid of an accent. I don't hear too many Americans talking like that, do you?
You sound like a leprechaun. That's what you sound like.
Yeah, I tell you what, leprechaun.
Listen, you Lucky Charms eating bastard.
There you go again with your good English, isn't it? Get off the phone.
Barry, this is Dave Brody from Elvis Duran in the Morning Show. You've been phone tapped.
What?
Your not wife thought it would be a good idea to phone tap you.
Jesus Christ almighty. I'm after roaring I'm in the middle of a car park here. Jesus, you're going to get me to Darling, you're dead. You're dead. You're dead.
The Elvis Duran phone tap.
There you have it.
Oh, my goodness.
Another happy moment.
We just insulted everyone in the world today.
Brief welcome to Bad Accent Theater, starring Dave Brody.
This phone tap was pre-recorded with permission granted by all participants. Elvis Duran and the Morning Show phone taps, bringing families together while tearing their homes apart.
You mentioned phone calls and prank phone calls and those kind of things. You call them phone taps.
Mm-hmm.
How do they differ from other shows that do phone scams or whatever they call their hokey prank calls? How does yours differ as far as quality and popularity, I guess?
People like to hear people get angry. They just do. And I think nobody gets angrier than a New Yorker.
Uh-huh.
You can call anyone in the 718 area code and say hello, and their response is going to be, fuck you, don't call me. And so if you have a scenario that's designed by their loved one or friend that is designed to piss them off, and they're volatile anyway as a New Yorker, that anger, people like to hear that. And so some of our calls over the years were 40 minutes, an hour, and calling them back or, and then Scary is a master of editing the length of the calls down to 5 minutes, 4.5 minutes to tell the story, to show the acceleration of anger, to make sure the details are in there, that you understand what went on. And a lot of times when you hear other morning shows, regardless of how they come about, they're edited poorly.
I was just going to say,
you can hear the choppy edits. You can hear the drop-ins that they went back and dropped in their own voice. We don't do drop-ins. We record a call. It's live, and whatever we say, based on our improv skills, and I did improv for a long time, you feed off the other person on the phone. So whatever they say is what you react to. And if you're not good at that, or you feel like I should go back and change what I said, well, it would have been funnier if I said this at that moment. Unless you're really good at editing, which I am, I know the difference in how you do it. A lot of radio stations, the guys don't have a producer on staff. They do it themselves. They may not be great at editing in Vox Pro. You can't do things without Pro Tools. So if you don't have Pro Tools and you're using, hotkeys or a shortcut, it's hard to make it sound great. And so a lot of times you have prank phone calls, and the jocks are hokey. They're nervous. They're not good at the job of doing prank phone calls. They put on wacky voices for no reason.
The background noise in the room when they're talking.
Yeah.
When the edit's not good, you can tell. It's like, wait, that was not.
And it's so easy if you have the right rig to take the ambiance from a dead spot and put it under the. You can fake it if you want to fake it. Again, it's not something that we do here. We take a lot of pride in doing the most real, most authentic of everything that we do and making it sound awesome. And we wouldn't put something on the radio if it was edited poorly, if it was choppy. You know, I've heard interviews that you could hear that edited where they reference something that was clearly deleted earlier in the interview, where it doesn't make sense. It sounds edited.
It's lazy.
It's lazy. It's not being really good at what you do. And yeah, we have more people to do it, so that helps us be better. We have people who specialize in what they do. You know, my philosophy is, you know, penny wise and pound foolish. If you cut a staff of anything, the work's going to suffer. Whether it's an automobile plant or a factory or a restaurant. Yeah, you can run a line in a kitchen, and I used to run kitchens and theme restaurants. You could probably run the line with 3 cooks, but if you had 4, you wouldn't burn as many burgers, you wouldn't drop as many fries on the floor and waste food. So you can cut, but what are you cutting? And so having the extra people gives us a guy who's such a good producer, everything sounds great. And a lot of us know Pro Tools on the staff. We could all edit to that level, but it helps when you have more people doing it.
For the past decade, millions of Americans have been tuning in to the Elvis Duran Morning Show for their epic prank calls.
Hey, Harry, this is Steven from the Animal Adoption Service.
Hi, this is Melissa Rich. I'm the person purchasing your property.
Now, Elvis's crew is going prime time by adding their biggest surprise yet, hidden cameras. Their mission? Help family and friends get revenge on deserving targets to take them down a notch.
Hello. What the hell is this? Excuse me, who the f*** you? Oh my God.
So, the next time your phone rings, think twice before you answer, because you might get phoned.
Hello.
With the popularity of those phone taps, got you a thing on Spike TV, a show called Phone.
Mm-hmm.
And it was pretty much just you. Were you playing the actual audio and reenacting the video? Or?
Yeah, we made it a point at the beginning of the show that said the phone calls were real. We did not say that the video was real, because the beauty of doing real prank phone calls is that you can do 5 and only 1 is good. You can do 10 and none are good. So to prank someone, you might call someone up and they say, oh, my husband's going to go crazy. And then you call him up and tell him that his car's on fire and he goes, I got insurance. What's your point? Okay, well, there's no prank phone call there. He's just, you know. So we went into studios for the entire summer of 2010, the 6 of us, and did nonstop prank phone calls. Television is different than radio, and whatever it is, we did legal prank phone calls, used the real audio on television, and then filmed video versions to go along with the audio that was real.
Where's that show now?
On my DVR.
There's no season 2 or?
No. Well, I can tell you what happened, legitimately. The company, Spike TV, it's a great network, but number one, our show was expensive to produce because of the filming and the going back and reenacting and all. Plus, there's tiers of everything. In other words, there's upper management, there's middle management, there's low management, and let's call them vice presidents. They said, do a show. We love the phone taps you do, but because it's Spike, we want you to turn it up. More sex, more anger, more profanity. Just go crazy.
So would it be safe to say that there were calls that maybe you would say, that's not really going to fly on Elvis's show, but you had them, like, this would be perfect for the TV show?
Well, we solicited on our show for a certain web address to go to and submit. And we tended to lean towards the more sexual, the more angry driven, the more stuff that was, I mean, we've done stuff that's sexual, but we left the sexual in and made it dirtier. So we wouldn't just say, I want you to pleasure me. We would say, I want your husband's been blowing my, whatever. He's gay and he's been blowing, whatever it was. We used profanity and we used more sexual situations like they asked us to do. And we did that for a month or so and submitted them, and they would listen and approve which ones were going to be on the TV show. And then when it got to the president, she decided they wanted to go for a more broad-based audience, and that stuff was too...
Spike is a male-driven network.
Well, you say that, but their goal was to broaden their base. They wanted women to watch the show and men to watch the show, and they didn't want it to be as male-driven.
Weren't they the network that said they used to use the moniker movies for men who like movies?
Yeah.
Wasn't that them?
Yes. Now, keeping in mind that I want to have a TV show again someday, I'm being as diplomatic as I can. But
that's me saying it, not Dave.
Right. So as explained to me, the higher-ups decided it was, oh, God, it's off to the right. We want it to be more centered. So we had to do 2 things. Change what we were doing mid-summer and start doing more Z100 Elvis Duran friendly content. And all the stuff that we had approved, we had to edit out a lot of stuff. So these great 8-minute phone calls then became 5-minute phone calls. Then they decided they wanted to do 4 per episode instead of 3 per episode, so we had shortened them again. So we talked about earlier telling a story and, start to finish. And so we were taking these 40-minute phone calls of amazing audio and making them 5 minutes, telling this great story. And after we had edited them, take another minute out. So we made it even shorter. Now the story is compact and rushed sounding. The really juicy stuff that you said you wanted wasn't in there any longer. And so the show was funny, but not as funny as we thought it could have been. The director was great. The staff was great. The network was fantastic to deal with. It's just the philosophy changed, and it wasn't as funny as maybe we thought it could have been. And so when it aired, they said, we liked it. We thought it would be funnier. And it's expensive, and we can rerun 50, 100 Ways to Die, whatever that show is, and that's cheaper, and we can rerun it, and it wasn't, financially viable. So that's the long version of the thing. They liked it, we liked it, the audience liked it, but expensive and ratings and funny level,
Was this their idea that they came to you, or were you pitching it to them?
I believe we pitched the original prank phone call show to them, and then we tweaked it, and then we all worked together on it.
What about shopping it around to somewhere else?
We did. There was a lot of political reasons that we didn't pursue that again.
Okay.
And we had some other great ideas for TV shows that I think going forward, we're going to look into some other really good ideas for shows. There's a lot of angles to put your show on television.
So it's not completely dead?
No. Oh, no. I think we would do it again. I don't think it's the perfect format being on television because of the having to recreate and edit and, you're dealing with censors and,
Elvis Duran.
Back to the show real quick. Favorite guests?
Wow. Selfishly or
selfishly.
Best on the...
Oh, give me both.
Well, I love having... We had Arnold Schwarzenegger in here a couple of months ago. To me, that was larger than life. He was a good guest, too. We've had baseball players on that, and I'm a Met fan, so we had David Wright in studio for something for a post-show interview. Some guests are incredibly nice. Lady Gaga is incredibly nice. She grew up listening to us. She couldn't be nicer. She, when we had her on before the hype and then during the hype. So that was great. We had Richard Lewis on. I grew up loving Richard Lewis. To have him on the show was amazing. There's just some people I just enjoy having. Guy Fieri's a good guest. He's always very, very, fun and playful, and he knows me. Dr. Oz is a great guest and a really, really nice guy.
Is this for good guest for the show, or is this still part of your selfish?
I think a little of both.
Okay.
We had Michael McKean on when I was on Elliot in the Morning because I used to do both shows. I would travel to D.C. 1 week a month and do his show, and then 3 weeks with Elvis. Michael McKean was on Laverne and Shirley. He was in Spinal Tap. So that was awesome. But we had Nick Nolte on his show at Elliot in the Morning, and he had a breakdown and started throwing food at Elliot during the interview. We had muffins and stuff, and he just Nick Nolte, the one who keeps going to jail? The one had I always confuse Nick Nolte with
Gary Busey.
Gary Busey. Sorry, it's Gary Busey. So we had Gary Busey on Elliot in the Morning, and he was a little off.
Yeah.
I think he was in D.C. to talk in front of Congress about head injuries. And out of nowhere, we had muffins or something on the counter. He said, pick it up and throwing them at Elliot. He was just as Elliot was interviewing, just throwing food at him. That was memorable, having NSYNC on when they were at the height of their popularity, take over the morning show. And, you can Google this, but we're the show that sold Justin Timberlake's French toast for thousands of dollars and got global press on that. That was fun. Oh, yeah, you can look that up. So we had breakfast with NSYNC. We had listeners, 100 listeners, and we had French toast and waffles and whatever the breakfast was. And Timberlake took a bite of French toast. And so the girls were going crazy on the other side of the glass. And this was, again, at the height. Probably 1999, 2000. No Strings Attached was out, and they were at the top of the world. And I said to Elvis, I said, these girls are so crazy for these guys. And they spent the whole show with us. They ran the board. They introduced songs. They took over the whole show. But when they left to perform outside, I said, we could sell this kid's French toast and people would buy it. And then Scotty, who works on the show, said, well, I have an eBay account. Why don't we put it on eBay? I said, oh, that's a great idea. I was like, I love that. Take a picture of it, get up on eBay. We put it up on eBay.
How did you authenticate it?
Well, we were the morning show that just had him on, and Now, keep in mind, this is 2000. There's no cell phones. It wasn't cameras all over the place. It was his French toast. So it was in front of him. We put it on a picture of like a poster we had in the studio, the French toast on the poster, and said, this is his toast. He was in the morning. We had pictures from the event, and we put it up.
Okay.
Went through the roof, right? People were bidding like crazy for it nationally.
What did it sell for?
Well, I think like $1,300, if I remember correctly, to a girl in the Midwest who wanted it. Anyway, so Timberlake started being asked on MTV, every show he did, what's with the French toast? They sold you French toast. And he was like, it's not my French toast. I don't even eat French toast. It's not my French toast. And we were like, it's his French toast. And he was denying it left and right. It's not my French toast. I don't appreciate they sold my French toast. He was annoyed by the whole thing because it was becoming about the French toast, not about the album or him or anything else. So because it's film back then, like a week later, we get pictures developed. 2 weeks later, one of the promotions guys was going through his camera. He had a disposable camera, and he had the pictures developed. And sure enough, there was a picture of him eating French toast, the piece that we had, and we put it on the website, and we went online. And Elvis was like, "Well," he said, "it wasn't his French toast. We've got a picture at Elvis Duran, Z100.com at the time." And then all of a sudden, Timberlake was like, "Yeah, I guess it was my French toast. I didn't remember it, and it's a great cause. The money's going to charity." He was behind it. He was really young back then, and he didn't remember, and people didn't do that back then. They didn't sell celebrity stuff on eBay.
We've tried.
Yeah.
And just nobody cares.
Yeah. Then we stopped. Like we had Lady Gaga's water bottle with a lipstick on it and a straw with a lipstick on it. And we were like, we could do this, but it's done already. We did it. We got a lot of, it's still websites. If you Google Justin Timberlake and French toast, it was in Playboy magazine. Got a lot of press out of that. So that was fun.
Elvis Duran.
Worst guess?
I would say any guest that doesn't play along with Elvis or have fun. We had and Elvis has documented this. Usher was a problem once. Usher was the favorite person I ever did IDs with, artist IDs. Yeah, hey, this is Usher. You're listening to whatever, and I'll explain why in a minute. But Usher came on a couple of years ago, 2 years ago maybe, and he wouldn't take his sunglasses off. Now Elvis has a rule about sunglasses: you can't wear them in the studio. The celebrity thing doesn't work. Just come in and be relaxed and be comfortable. And he wouldn't take his sunglasses off. And then Elvis asked him about Chris Brown. Hey, what do you think about Chris Brown? He's up and coming. He's sort of similar in style to you. Does that push you? Does that drive you? And he got annoyed and clammed up, and he didn't want to talk about other people. I'm here to talk about my album. And, shortly, like within a minute, the interview ended, and that was it. That was an uncomfortable, like he wasn't looking to have fun. He could have just been like, whatever. And he's a nice guy. He didn't feel the vibe of our show.
If you can't say a name, that's totally fine. But is that like the worst kind of scenario that you've had? Because otherwise, you guys have had a really successful run.
I know before I started the show, Jamie Lee Curtis walked out or hung up on the phone. I think Harry Connick Jr. walked out of the studio many years ago because Elliot was asking him about his hot wife, Jill Goodacre. Mm-hmm. And he said, a gentleman doesn't speak that way, and he walked out. We really haven't had a lot of problems. We're not controversial. We don't try to ask the gotcha questions.
Yeah.
So people don't get angry. Have there been guests, without mentioning names, you've had them, where they're phony, the mics go off and they're a diva or they're not fun.
Paris Hilton.
Okay. We had Paris Hilton up at the station, not on our show, but up at the station. And she was pleasant. I mean, she's spacey, but she wasn't difficult. She was like, whatever you want. I had to record a voicemail for Elvis. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I missed you, with some jokes in it, which she played along. So I can't say anything bad about her. There are guests that come up that represent themselves as the Queen of the Puerto Rican Day Parade and then won't speak Spanish for the IDs or they won't do things, or they go, I don't do that. I've had guests come up where clearly they don't read, like can't read, where their assistant reads it to them, and that's not them being one way or another. It's just, when you get the mics off, you see things and you learn things from people that you wouldn't normally see on the you hear on the radio. Mostly everybody's nice. Rob Thomas sat down and answered phones. Mark Anthony answered phones. Taylor Swift may be one of my favorites. Taylor Swift, whenever she comes up, she hugs everybody. She remembers everybody. She hugs every fan. She's phenomenal. She's one of my favorites.
Do you think you guys kind of get a pass because of not just the fame and success of Z100, but the importance of Z100 is for a lot of the music industry and movies and things like that, that you're more than likely not going to get somebody who comes up here and is going to be a dick.
I think if you want to sell a record, you shouldn't be a dick to begin with. I
agree, but there are people who are just that way.
You know what? If you go on a big job interview and you're a stick, let's say you're grammar police and you're on a big job interview, are you going to point out to the guy interviewing you that he just used a wrong conjugation of a verb? No, you're on good behavior. You put things aside. You want to sell records. It's your career. If you're smart, you come up here and you act nice and you play the game. And then you go home and you can do whatever you want. Look, there are people who don't like publicity. Kurt Cobain, didn't want the fame. He didn't want to, he didn't like people around him. There are people who don't want to play the game. They don't want to have to go to radio stations. They don't want to do interviews at 7 a.m. Some people will not come in live. They only come in the afternoon and tape. And if they're big enough, we'll do it. But if they're not, we say, then too bad. But mostly everybody, I'm surprised, mostly everybody seems genuinely nice in this industry, in this format, that's in a good mood. But there are some that aren't, and you know it.
Most memorable time on the show since you've been with them that's not guest related?
First thing that popped into my head when you said that was when Cubby, who was our afternoon DJ at Z100 when we were in Jersey City, he had bought a fog machine for when he did like club gigs, whatever. So he brought the fog machine into the studio and thought it would be cool to turn it on. And he turned it on. Well, the fog is actually like smoke and set the smoke detectors off. And some of the sprinklers went off. And the fire department showed up with axes running into the building. It was shortly after 9/11. So the fire department was on edge. And, that was a crazy moment. Anytime Greg T gets naked or I have to see his private parts, that's memorable. That isn't guest related. I think when I get emails that people love my work, that sticks out in my mind. Because I used to be a comic and do improv comedy. When you're on stage, it's instant gratification. You say something, they laugh, it's funny. But in radio, unless now with the advent of text messaging and Twitter, you don't really know right away if they liked it. And so I think the first time I got an email that somebody loved what I did and remembered my name, that stood out for me. But the smoke detector was pretty good. The fog machine was a pretty memorable moment.
You were one of the shows that were live during 9/11. The studios at the time were over in Jersey City. You were right on the water, so you saw Lower Manhattan and everything. Yeah. Outside of the audio, which I'm sure is all over online, a lot of the morning shows that were on at that time, the audio is everywhere. But you could see everything. You were witnessing this as it happened. Like, what did you do?
Well, I have to qualify my answer because I was actually with Elliot in the morning that morning in Washington.
Oh, you weren't even there?
No. I was in Washington that also got attacked by a plane. But here's what I know happened because I asked.
All right, let me just, so it doesn't seem like I'm being insensitive. All right, you were in D.C. I was only saying New York
because we have a view.
Because you had the view. Yeah, so, I don't know where DC 101 is in comparison to where it was hitting the Pentagon.
No, it was in Silver Spring, Maryland, in a field, and nothing was around.
Gotcha.
But we had a TV in the studio, and I saw it was my city. I felt it like a New Yorker. The people here, to my knowledge, at the time, Z100 was the only radio station with a clear view of the Twin Towers. We were literally across the water facing them. The entire 30-foot window was designed with them in the center of the window to look at those buildings. And so what happened was the blinds were down, and because in the morning the sun would come up right over Manhattan, right between the towers, and shoot right into our window. So the phone ops couldn't see. They had their backs to the skyline. And so they would have the blinds down up until a certain time of day when the sun would go up. And I think J-Lo was playing because they turned off J-Lo, whatever the J-Lo song was at the time. So then they raised the blinds up, and the phone producer, now we were west of the Twin Towers in New Jersey. So you could see just a little hole on the side, but not the big hole, which the first plane hit from the north. So he saw the small hole and the smoke and went and told Elvis, and you hear on the air check, we think a plane may have hit the building.
Man, Z100 852. Something weird is going on.
Yeah.
The World Trade Center is on fire.
Oh my
Seriously,
goodness.
the top of the building. We're trying to get information, Elvis.
It looks like floors are just gone. Looks like how do you turn it on? Apparently, something major has blown up at the World Trade Center.
Oh my gosh.
Take it.
We're watching Oh my gosh! If you look at the top of the World Trade Center, one of the towers, a lot of the windows are missing. Hey, Tim Louie, what?
Hey, MJ just called. She said she saw on the news that a plane
crashed. Just got it. Plane crashed into the World Trade Center. That's all it is right now is a headline.
We're being told arriving on the scene as we speak. This happened about 8:48 a.m. is when news first came of it.
Let me describe what we're looking at. We're looking at the very top, the very top third of the World Trade Center, the one with the big antenna on it. It looks like it looks like maybe 5 or 6 floors of windows are out of the building. Smoke is billowing out of the World Trade Center tower. Lots of smoke. And if it was a plane crash, are we assuming the plane is in the building?
It looks like it smashed right in and is in there. Do you see a hole on the other side, Elvis? I can't
tell.
Are there people
Once
in
again,
there?
we're listening. Of course there are.
Oh my God.
You weren't syndicated yet, right?
No,
Okay,
no.
so
This
you're
is
still
2001, so we were just New York local. And they went to commercial, whatever, and the entire staff of Z100 was at the window watching what was going on, and the building was on fire, and they were sort of trying to explain what was going on. At some point, they turned off Z100 and potted up MSNBC for coverage. We were in the tallest building in Jersey at the time of the incident, and so they were evacuating our building. They evacuated all the tall buildings. But before that happened, so the staff was at the window, and they saw the second plane coming up the harbor. We had an incredible view of the Statue of Liberty in Brooklyn. You could see the tip of Manhattan, and so you could see south of Manhattan and the plane coming. And everybody watched it, and from what they tell me, they were all like, "Oh, I wonder if that plane is flying by to see what's going on. We wonder if it's going to drop water." They couldn't tell what kind of plane it was, and then they couldn't understand why it was so low. And then they, of course, watched it fly right into Tower 2. So they all saw it happen. At that point, there was a full evacuation. They all left the building, and as they were driving away, they saw the first tower fall, which was Tower 2, in the rearview mirror.
Jeez.
And then. So that was Tuesday. I came back Friday afternoon. My week ended. The neighborhood was a military zone. There were tanks on every corner and soldiers.
Neighborhood for the radio station.
Yeah, which was Jersey City. And I remember coming up on Amtrak, because I used to take Amtrak down to D.C., and I would always, it's still difficult for me. I always would look for the Twin Towers, which meant I was going to be home soon.
Yeah.
Because the train comes up the New Jersey corridor. And you just saw the smoke. I had seen it on television, but it was different when you first saw the towers. And, I remember coming into work that Monday and, we had to do a show. How do you do a show? How do you be funny? But I just remember, you looked out the window and you saw the...
So you weren't on for or Elvis wasn't on for the rest of the week? Because that happened on a Tuesday.
No. We're on the rest of the week. The one thing I left out is before we turned off the radio station, knowing... New York and Elliot and we were all family, I called the hotline, and John Bell, who was one of our co-hosts at the time, he gave a play-by-play to us on DC 101, and we told them what was going on in DC. And so we crossed the 2 radio stations for a while. And John was describing what he was seeing when the buildings collapsed, what he thinks he saw. He was looking out the window. He stayed for a longer than most.
Elliot in the morning.
There's raining papers and
A second plane has now flown in.
Wait, explosion at the Pentagon?
A third location on alert and outside of Washington.
I don't have words to describe what I'm witnessing right now.
Freedom itself was attacked this morning by a faceless coward. Freedom will be defended.
Oh, God!
Oh, my God!
Not on itself, and it is.
All right, so now we look back up to the TV. One of the World Trade Towers has collapsed and fallen.
Elvis will tell you this if you ask him. His proudest moment in radio was September 12th, when he went on the air and talked to New Yorkers and helped them through that and helped them people collect clothing and bring water and talking to people on their way to help. It was, and he's most proud of the New York listeners of the way they responded, and us trying to figure out how to do a radio show the day after. And that radio, if you listen to the show that they did for the 2-3 weeks after, is unbelievable radio.
Were they doing sort of an all-talk thing? I mean, were you still playing music, or were you just talking?
No commercials for the first week, I think, and no songs, just talking for 4 hours. Taking calls, talking to firefighters, talking to people on their way to help, talking to people who couldn't find their relatives.
Wow.
Talking to people who saw things, talking to people who just needed to hear our show. 4 hours. And we did the same thing in Washington. We just talked. We just went on the radio and talked.
It was just incredible. We sit there and play 10 songs in a row, and we do wacky contests, and we have fun with listeners, but we've never really thought seriously about how we can change the world with our radio station, and we did. It was just awesome. And we still get email from people saying they don't know how they could get through all that without Z100. I'm thinking, without a radio station? It's a radio station. It's number 600 on your list of important things, and they said that they couldn't do it without us. And I'm glad I do what I do for a living now. It makes me really proud to be working in this business.
Well, how do you play a song?
Yeah.
You know, how do you do it? How do you play a commercial? It wasn't important. And that's when we really removed the veil of we're at the top of the Empire State Building. It wasn't important anymore to continue the mirage that we were like, look, we're in Jersey City. We're right across the water. We watched it happen. We're looking at it. And we had to close the blinds for months. We couldn't look at the smoking wreckage. You know, the building was just there, and, you know, the 2 buildings, all 7 buildings, was just smoking for months. We just took the blinds down. We couldn't look. It was very difficult to come into work. Yeah, try being funny at 5 a.m, you know, and you pull into Jersey City, you see it across the water, and then you get into your office and the window is that. So.
Jeez. Well, Dave, you've been very generous with your time here. Just 2 quick questions,
Sure.
and then we'll wrap this up here. Based on everything that you told me as far as how you got into radio and you're working on one of the most successful morning shows in the United States, maybe even anywhere, is there anything new out there to do in radio? Everyone keeps saying it's a dying medium. A lot of companies aren't developing a farm league for talent. So, you know, after you guys go, after Howard goes, after Opie and Anthony go, Hannity goes, there doesn't seem to be a small to mid-market buzz as far as people who would take over these shows and keep things going. Like, is there still something new to do with radio, or is it just going to simply be like sports talk, politics, and just music?
You know, we recently replaced our co-host when Caroline left, and one of my jobs is to help find the next person. I found Carolina when we were looking to make a change on the show, and I've helped other radio shows in the country find their co-hosts and talent. And so I sort of have an ear and an eye for morning shows around the country. I know a lot of them. I know what their talents are. I know what's right and wrong with their morning shows. There are shows we're not syndicated into those cities that are doing very well, which is why we're not there. They have very good shows. Kane is doing very well in Washington. He's in our company. Mojo has a great show in Detroit. There are a lot of guys with talent. There's not as many female morning show co-hosts that are very, very talented because a lot of shows don't utilize them enough. I think that's a problem. I think a lot of people don't know how to do CHR radio. So they do a guy show. They do a show for what they think is funny and not what the audience thinks is funny. And that doesn't work. And I know you guys on your show call it 2 microphones in a hole.
Yeah.
Right?
But in that scenario, usually it's because we find these, I don't even want to say watered down, they're just not even a copy of anything, where they think, oh, a guy and a girl is a combo, or 2 guys and a girl is a combo.
Right.
And the girl just makes noises to kind of keep the guy in line.
Yeah.
They're not really a
Bob.
personality.
Yeah.
It's just like, we need to put a female on that show so we can put her poster up on a billboard so that females will listen to the station.
And that's why our show is syndicated, because those markets don't get it. And then we come in and we get CHR. I shouldn't say female. It's CHR. Because the women on our show have always been, since 1996 when this show started, strong, empowered, equal co-hosts with equal or differing opinions. And they don't ever tell Elvis, oh, Elvis, because they're talking about vibrators and sex and sexual positions and relationships. They are as, you know, with it, with the format and with pop culture and with the people they're representing. If you're a 24-year-old female, you don't want to listen to, oh, Bob, you shouldn't say that. They want to hear a girl saying, they want to watch Girls on HBO and see girls living their life. That's why that shows a success. It's real dating situations. It's real conversations. It's real uncomfortable situations. And we talk about it. We do with 4 people what Howard did by himself. What Robin did as his, Howard made Robin a sexual, bright contributor to the show. He didn't make her the news girl in the room, even though they tried to make her that. And that's what we do. We have powerful, strong women on our show that could host their own shows if they wanted to. And I don't think a lot of small markets do that. Now, you asked me, is there a future for radio? Yeah, there's very talented people in radio. It's the program directors who have the old way of doing things in their head, don't talk a lot, forward momentum, play a lot of music.
Well, can it also be said that it may also be the company that they're working for? Because a lot of times certain companies will take a, let's say Z100 here in New York or KISS in Los Angeles, and they're not a Clear Channel-owned station, but they'll copy the sort of the imaging, the flow, the style of what you guys do, and then cut and paste it into their markets. So it's like, how do you develop a talent when all of a sudden they're just saying, no, this works here, so it's got to be here, 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 and you're not letting anybody locally, develop and shine?
There was a radio station in Vermont. They're not on the radio anymore, but they made their website the same colors. They did all of the same benchmarks at the same times. They would take our phone taps, record them, and then hire actors to reenact them with their hosts. So they would do our prank phone calls, but they would reenact them and keep the names of the people in our real calls that we would make up. Like TJ, who used to be on our show, he did a character called Officer Bradshaw. He would pull people over, and the person on the other end would think that he was pulling over their loved one. And he would go, "This is Officer Bradshaw." He would do like a real obnoxious cop. And rather than even changing the name, he actually said, "This is Officer Bradshaw." So they were terrible. But they thought, well, if we do everything Elvis does exactly the same way and have the same website with the same layout and the same jock questions and bio questions, and they did everything. They were terrible. So it isn't just what we do. It's really how we do it and the talent that we do it. Everyone can play baseball, but there's only one team that's really good, every year, or a couple of teams. You can't just go, well, I'll have a shortstop and a second baseman and we'll be just as good as the Yankees. Well, they're the freaking Yankees. There's a reason. You can't just put on another uniform and play baseball and be the Yankees. So I think there's somebody in college that's going to reinvent radio. I think there's somebody in a small market right now or a mid-sized market that has a dream of doing something really creative. And eventually he'll get a program director who says, go be creative. But there's always that pig vomit character who says, play 8 songs an hour and don't be creative. That's not what you're paid for. And you know what it is? In CHR, it's easy to play music. You can get a 4 share, 5 share right away, play music, and you don't go bankrupt. Because if you do what we do, you'll get a 1 share for a year, a 2 share for 2 years sometimes, and then eventually you're at a 12. But if you can't afford to get there, then you play music and you tell your jock to shut up and don't do anything that might bother anybody. Don't make waves. Just be the friendly guy in the morning, the cup of coffee. And then you live with a 4 share and you take a paycheck. But you could be brilliant. Now, do you bust out? Do you try to go somewhere else? Do you apply for a position on my show or, another similar show? It depends on the person. But that's part of the problem is the old mentality of the music director and the program director. They were trained that music is why people listen to radio.
Dave Brody, executive producer, co-executive producer.
Yeah, he's not here.
Executive producer of the Elvis Duran and the Morning Show, syndicated all around the country. Also,
XM12.
Have you seen any?
Yes.
Any growth from being on the satellite?
Well, we're not really on there to grow. We're on there to.
Has it done anything for you guys?
Sure.
Other than just expose you to a larger market.
You know what we found? A lot of times we go into a new market and there's people who knew us because they had XM and they found us that way. Or they found us on iHeartRadio. Mm-hmm. And then we add Waco, Texas, and people go, "Oh my God, I've been in Waco for 3 years listening to you guys. This is awesome." So yeah, it's helped in that it breaks the ice for us in other markets, and it opens. So maybe a PD hears us, they wouldn't have heard us before, and says, "Oh, these guys are funny." I mean, how do you not know who we are? But if you didn't know who we were and you hear us, you might go, "Well, these guys are pretty good." So yeah, I think it helps us.
Final question for you, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
When are you going to give up on the Mets?
That's a great.
You're one of 2 people I know that are still with that team,
and the other one plays for the team. You know what? If you're a real fan, you don't change because something's good or something's bad. You are a fan of who you are a fan of. And nobody asked me that question in 1986 when they completely dominated baseball. Mm. And no one will ask me that in 2014 or 15 when the pitching catches up and they have a good team again. So they sucked. But there were 16-year periods where the Yankees sucked. It happens to everybody. And now that they don't want to go over the payroll tax limit, and so we can talk about sports. I may have a sports talk show someday, but I love the Mets. I love radio.
Is that an exclusive here?
Sure. If somebody's willing to give me a sports talk show and Mike Francesa falls asleep permanently, sure, I would love to do that. As long as I got to continue doing comedy and be funny and make people laugh, and I would find a way to do both.
David, thank you very much for your time. Tell Elvis whenever he gets a chance, I'd like to talk to him too.
You got it. Can I put my pants back on now?
Sure.
Thank you. Hey, it's David Brody. I just did the Radio Inquisition with my longtime friend, fellow morning show producer, and fellow radio geek Erik. He's my peer in the radio industry, but he made me feel like what I do every day is important. By the way, nice jingle.
Radio Inquisition.
This concludes my two-part interview with David Brody. Subscribe, leave a comment, or you can always go to ericnagel.com. And be sure to catch David Brody every weekday morning on the Elvis Duran Morning Show, heard in New York City on Z100, syndicated across the country, Channel 12 on SiriusXM Satellite Radio, and the iHeartRadio app. A lot of thank yous for this two-parter here, so we might as well get to them. Thank yous, of course, go out to Elvis Duran, everybody at Z100 in New York City, Premier Networks, Elliot Siegel and DC 101, Glenn Beck, Spike TV, Art Vulo, David Fox, Real World Jingles, Jam Creative Productions, Rich Broski Creative Services, SiriusXM Satellite Radio, and of course, my guest, David Brody. Now, normally I would end the show with my regular closer, but today I'm going to leave you with a montage of songs that David put together for the Opie and Anthony Show. I hope you like it, and until next time, be seeing you.
Was in the studio, on the radio, no one cared what I was saying. I took a big chance without my spandex pants and the baldness I'm displaying. Every single day, I turn fans away. Nobody listened to me. When the end came, I knew it's because I really blew. Now they've hired Opie and Anthony. I ain't got no talent. Such a phony, such a phony. Why would somebody go and take a chance on me? I guess things were bad. They gave up on me, babe. Should have played Van Halen songs all of the time. And he fired me. Now CBS fired me. Flop. My show was a flop. I got dropped. I signed up. And my ratings went down. Radio's tough. They ran me right out of town. I can't believe I'm out of here. 92.3, just like my pal Howard Stern. My show stunk like a big turd. So now it's O&A's turn. 'Cause I got dumped.
His hot red and white Ford Shelby GT 500. He might speed up to 125. Agent Bob even thinks he won't stay alive. Meadowbrook Parkway, glass of wine, and can't drive 105. If you screw up, he'll cut you down. He likes showers of yellow or brown. Little Jenny, Jenny, oh Jimmy Norton, he's prostitute supporting. Jenny, Jenny, oh Jimmy Norton, he gave up booze and snorting.
He's got his daily checklist. It starts with Opie's breakfast. He's on him like a necklace. He's club soda Kenny. Security. XPD. OCD. Letterman, Letterman. O&A, we're on Letterman. Anthony, really good. Opie was stiff as wood. Was he scared of Dave Letterman? Steve's the guy who heckles on the phone. Then he'll end up yelling for Ramon. He is Steve from Yellowstone. He has got an endless supply of verbal landmines when guests are wasting time.
Sam's not black. His ancestors, Thomas Jefferson. He's not black. He doesn't have big lips, just a real big thumb. Well, his skin's kinda weird, it's not black or white. If he's white, then he's dark. If he's black, he's light. Who the hell can figure? Who the hell can figure? If Sam's white or a white or a yeah.
So now I'm sick of the pests, the pests, the pests, the pests on you. You made a real big mistake. It's real, the pain you feel. Quickly, you'll be suppressed and they will not ever rest.
Even though Opie wants to go home, Anthony really wants to go home. Norton has a hooker at his home, at his home. Bonus time. Every single morning they could stay on until Ron and Fez